Hi, I'm MJ. I would like to talk about experiences that I've had in my past as being a child and a teenager through the school system. I feel that when we share experiences as late diagnosed autistics, that it helps other people to feel seen. It helps people to look back in their life and to realise that their experiences are very similar. And it also just gives a language to those who've never considered how to process these memories before. I feel that shared experience is massively important in our community. So let's just share our high school experience. What was friendships like? What were teachers like? What were subjects like? Did you have a teacher that despised you? That no matter how hard you tried, just made you feel that you were never going to hit the mark with them? They had issues with you. Did you have a teacher who was like Miss Honey out of Matilda, who just had kindness and radiated love every time she was near you and made you feel safe and whole and happy and like you could achieve things? Did you have a safe space that you needed to escape to that was away from everyone else, especially during break time? Did you have a subject that you really excelled in? Or did you have a subject that you just could not get? I feel all of these experiences make a difference to us. Sports is another thing. Sports is usually a thing that's like where you picked last, where you picked first. I was never good at sports. Games during recess time, during break time. Were you included? Were you invited to join in? How do your friendships sit when you were at school? My whole experience at school was awful. Primary school, high school. I hated it. I couldn't wait to leave. Friendships were always really hard for me. I couldn't figure out how to join friendship groups that were already established. I couldn't create one, and I couldn't maintain the ones that I could make along the way. In primary school, I remember my best friend was literally the janitor. I would follow him around as he was emptying the bins at break time. He was interested in me, he was curious, he was kind, he was a safe person. He probably felt sorry for me because I was a bit of a loner. In high school, I had the joy, I guess, of accidentally falling into a friendship group in my first year. I think there was one girl in there that I really liked, and she was really popular, so she had a lot of friends, and they just all hung out together. And I thought it was a bit odd that this group of people were accepting me, and like I was finally popular, I was finally figuring out how to do friendships. But none of them really engaged with me much, and it was always a bit of a struggle when my specific friend in that group was never there. They didn't really make me feel very welcome. And then one day someone came up to me from that group and gave me a slip of paper. This was basically a petition that everyone in the group had signed. The petition was for me to leave the group because no one liked me. I thought, mean. There's other ways of excluding me from your friendship group, but getting everyone to sign a petition just seems really harsh. So I guess that was the end of that one. I started to move on and I became friends with a set of twins. I was so excited. They lived not that far from me, so we used to walk the same route to school. So we naturally became friends through seeing each other on the road all the time. It was very overstimulating though, because both of these girls wanted to talk to me and have my attention all at the same time. And I found it really hard to navigate having two best friends who wanted my attention constantly, to the extent that they were jealous of each other. But then that friendship grew and they invited another girl into this dynamic. This other girl didn't like me, so it became really awkward. And I also didn't know how to do friendships with a new person. I was like, okay, I know how to do friendships with you guys. I've navigated that. I've figured out how to make it work. And now you're adding a new person into the group. But the new person thought I was odd. So they very quickly managed to convince the twins not to like me anymore. And it became really ugly and really sad. And they started using really mean words towards me. And I was hurt. I was hurt because I didn't think anything had actually changed between my friendship with them. But because this new girl had this idea that I wasn't cool, then they decided that I wasn't cool enough, which was really harsh. Anyway, I discovered that I was better on my own anyway. And I would quite often find myself in the library at break times. I wasn't necessarily studious, but they had computers in the library, and I loved just sitting playing games on the computer or researching something that I was interested in. Nobody bothered me in the library. It was nice and calm. My librarian was called Mrs. Page. Funny side note there. But yeah, and then if I wasn't in the library, I could be found within a corridor during break time. Places that we're not really supposed to go, but teachers didn't give me any bother with it because they saw that I was a loner. It became a safe place because no one bothered me. I didn't like being out in the yard where everyone was, because I would just either get names called or thrown things at me. And I used to wear glasses in school for a little while, but then I got to the point where people kept trying to grab my glasses and chuck them off my face. So I stopped wearing glasses soon after that was happening often. And they would try and trip me up in corridors, pull my hair, spit on me. Just disgusting behaviour, really. And I didn't deserve any of it. I always tried my hardest to stay invisible, to stay kind and polite and not speak out of turn to anyone. Basically, I just tried not to be a bother. And the same thing happened in classes. Like, I was a very good pupil. I sat and listened and I respected the teacher whenever they were speaking. I tried to answer questions properly. I tried to be studious. I tried to just be my best, the perfect student. To the extent I was almost invisible to most of my teachers too. Although there was one teacher, my physics teacher, Mr. Harvey. He was a delight. That was sarcasm, by the way. He was awful. He, for some reason, just despised me, and I don't understand what I did wrong to make him dislike me so much. But every time I was in his class, I felt so alienated and I felt so uncomfortable. And I didn't really understand physics very well, and I remember asking questions just to help me kind of catch up and be at the same speed as everyone else. And he hated that. He rejected any question I asked and he ignored me most of the time. And I got to the point where I wasn't keeping up with the class. So I had to get a separate tutor outside of school to help me understand the subject just so I could keep up. And one time I had this homework and I handed it in and he marked it and I got good grades for it. Like, I did really well, and I was feeling such a sense of achievement because finally I was doing well in this class that I had been failing at, not to any advantage of the teacher helping me. He was a numpty. But it was tradition in this class that if you did well in your work, that you would get a stamp. He would stamp your work. And he didn't stamp my work because he didn't like me. So I said, you need to stamp my work. I've done the same. I've done good. And it's like what you do. For me, it was like a sense of justice. Like, I deserve a stamp on my work. It's such a silly thing to be concerned about. But for me, I wanted to be treated just like everyone else in my class. And if I did well, I wanted that to be represented with a stamp. And he fumbled about and said a lot of stuff under his breath. And then he grabbed my hand and stamped the back of my hand. It was painful and humiliating. And I felt, I'm going to get a bruise from that because that was quite a harsh stamp. But I was more just hurt the fact that he had kind of done it in front of everyone, and it was really embarrassing. He just had no desire to try and improve his relationship with me. So I hated it. But, you know, at the end of the day, I got my stamp on my hand. I remember having a teacher who was really kind. This was back in primary school, not so much high school. But there was a really nice teacher, Mrs. Griffiths, and she was actually only with us for half the year because she ended up getting pregnant and going on maternity leave halfway through the year. And I liked her a lot. She was just kind. She was nice and gentle and sweet. I don't know, she was like a Miss Honey to me. I loved her class. I don't remember anything that I learned, but I remember how she treated me. And that's always what they say, like, kids will never remember what you teach them, but they'll remember how you treated them. And if you treat a child with kindness, they will remember you for life. So I remember Mrs. Griffiths, and I don't know whatever happened to her. I don't know if she ever came back to the school, but she was wonderful, and I'm so grateful that I had an experience in my primary years with such a lovely, wonderful teacher. Rules were always really important to me at school. Rules were not to be broken. Rules kept us safe, kept us in line. You knew that you were going to be okay as long as you followed the rules. I remember feeling very confused one day. During PE class, we had swimming. And we were asked to bring in our pajamas and wear them over the top of our swimsuit this day. I guess the whole purpose of this day was survival techniques. I remember feeling, what? No, we don't wear pajamas we don't wear clothes over the top of our swimsuits. Like, who does that? That's crazy. That's against the rules. I was so fixated on this being weird that I couldn't really pay attention to why the class was different, why we were using this technique, and to learn survival skills. But I didn't care. I just remember being in the water with my clothes on and feeling that heaviness of my clothes pressing against me because they were so wet and clinging to my skin. And it was really uncomfortable for me. My brain was doing somersaults because I just couldn't understand why we were doing this. And I was like, my clothes are wet. How am I going to take them home? Like, yeah, I don't know. There was just lots of confusion going on in my brain. So there was one of the times where I'm kind of like, okay, why are we breaking the rules? And I guess sometimes rules were broken at school if there was an opportunity to learn something from it, or, you know, it didn't fit the bill. I don't know. It was just, my brain didn't like it when rules were broken, especially by the teachers. So there are just a few examples of my school experience and where I felt I was the oddball. I was treated like I was different from everyone else, or I didn't quite get what was going on around me. I know that our high school experiences are all generally quite sad stories with the autistic community, and there's a lot of people who their school years were maybe their worst years. It's a difficult time to be a teenager. It's a difficult time to be a child when you are neurologically different, when you're wired differently from your peers, and you don't quite understand that because you don't know you're autistic. Anyway, I would love it if you could write some comments about your experiences on anything that you feel that's resonated with you in this video. Like, I genuinely believe that when we share our experiences, it makes us feel so much more seen in this world. And it's just nice to know that when you go through crappy stuff in your past, that other people have gone through it too. I know that sounds awful to say, but it just makes you feel less alone in this world. Okay, I look forward to reading your comments. Thanks, guys.